Welcome in back from the studio, the one that you're used to. A couple jerseys up on the wall. A lot of travel here last couple days. Went through a lot just to make it out to Nashville for Christmas, and it was fun. It was worth it. But man, there obviously is a lot going on in the country right now. Thankfully, the travel situation is starting to settle itself, so we'll be in a good position right now to make it to Vegas unless people are on that one airline that's not making flights. But no, I think it's all going to settle itself for 49ers fans to take up what they said 60% of the stadium in Las Vegas, according to Vivid Seats on Sunday. And, the 49ers are growing as favorites in this game. It's up to 10 points and possibly counting even more. They even had a little title for that. There we go. 10 and even more because no Derek Carr. The Raiders have decided to bench Derek Carr for the rest of the season, and it sounds like he's not even around the facility anymore because he doesn't want to be a distraction this year. So, for the rest of this year, moving on now into 2023. Very likely that Las Vegas, I said Oakland, will part ways with Carr moving forward. And they don't want him to get hurt over the past 2 weeks because that would trigger about $40 million in injury guarantees. Be like the Jimmy Garoppolo situation last year. 49ers were trying to trade him, but he had the injured shoulder, so they couldn't. Difference was the 49ers didn't owe Jimmy Garoppolo anything last year. The Raiders would owe, if Derek Carr got hurt, they would owe him somewhere between 33 and 40 million. So you could see why they want to maintain that flexibility now that they have officially been eliminated by that loss in Pittsburgh. The Raiders also won't have Chandler Jones or Denzel Perryman. Jones, one of their best edge rushers, obviously not as good as Max Crosby, who they still have, and Perryman, one of their top linebackers. Both of those players placed on injured reserve today. So no Carr, no Chandler Jones, no Denzel Perryman. That all adds up to the 49ers favored by 10 and possibly even more. So this should be a handy victory for the 49ers. That being said, the Raiders still have Max Crosby. They still have Devontae Adams, and they have Jarrett Stidham starting at quarterback, who doesn't have a whole lot of experience in the NFL, but has been around for a few seasons now. Baylor and then Auburn for Jarrett Stidham. Charvarius Ward said, yeah, as a Chief, I got to play against Jarrett Stidham. I think it was last year, Charvarius Ward said, and threw a couple picks to the Kansas City Chiefs. So Derek Carr wasn't having a good year, but he was still starting over Jarrett Stidham, and they didn't bench Derek Carr for performance reasons as much as they might insinuate that. Some tweets might insinuate that. They benched him for those salary cap reasons that I just said. The monetary reasons, the injury guaranteed money. They don't want to risk it. So they're going to their backup in Las Vegas. The 49ers get to play against the backup, and they are big-time favorites. So the last two games here of the regular season, the 49ers will be big-time favorites. This one against the Raiders, then against the Cardinals at home. They remain a game out of the number 2 seed, and Minnesota's got a big one at Green Bay this weekend. In fact, I should look up the schedule, the spread for that. Minnesota. I'm guessing Green Bay's gonna be favored in this one. Green Bay spread. Let's see. What do you guys think it's going to be? Oh, Minnesota's favored by 1.5. But Rodgers missed practice today, I think, with some kind of shoulder injury. But there doesn't seem to be a bunch of panic. People think that he's going to play. But that's essentially a toss-up, right? Minnesota minus 1.5. Green Bay is playing for their playoff lives, so they will be motivated. And it's going to be cold. Minnesota's used to playing in their dome. I don't know how cold it's going to be in Green Bay, but it's Green Bay on January 1st. So I reckon to say that it will be decently cold. And that will be that. If Green Bay can beat the Vikings, well, then you'll see the 49ers in position to grab the number 2 seed because they're going to be heavily favored here over the Raiders and then heavily favored over the Cardinals. Other news, Brock Purdy was full go at practice today. He was letting him rip more aggressively than I have seen him over the past couple weeks. Remember, I said he was taking a little bit easy, especially last Wednesday or last Tuesday in practice, I guess I should say, ahead of the Washington game. Now Purdy letting it rip more, some shots further downfield, obviously getting that oblique injury further and further in the rearview mirror. Jimmy Garoppolo also was cited in the locker room for the first time since his injury today. He was on a scooter, didn't have anything on his left foot, but I think that normally he is in a boot. So there obviously still is a solid chance that Jimmy Garoppolo is able to come back this season. And again, you look at this in terms of potential QB room depth. That's what the 49ers want. Potential quarterback room depth for the 49ers. They want Garoppolo and Purdy both available for the playoffs. And I think if Garoppolo is at a certain percentage of health, that's not 100%, and Purdy continues playing as well as he does right now, it's a no-brainer. Garoppolo needs to clear a threshold to be active as your backup. Purdy can continue playing, and then you could let everything develop organically. Kind of like the 49ers let the quarterback situation this season play out organically, right? They had Trey Lance. They had Jimmy Garoppolo, got him there at the last minute before the roster cut down, and obviously they drafted Brock Purdy. They needed all three of them. Lance went down in week 1. Garoppolo went down against Miami in week 13. It's been Purdy's shows from here on, from there on out, except he also has been dealing with an injury. He also is going to have to navigate the tough waters of the NFL moving forward. Even games against the Raiders and the Cardinals can present harrowing grounds. And he also will have to deliver in the playoffs. And the 49ers would rather have more capable throwers than fewer ones as they enter that test. So good news on both the Purdy and the Garoppolo fronts as we wait for further updates on all of that. Nick Bosa out with a illness today. I saw him briefly in the locker room. He, was just changing, put on his backpack and walked out. Then he wasn't out of practice, and the 49ers said he had an illness, but he is Defensive Player of the Month, and I'm sure he wants to be out there against the Raiders on Sunday. The crazy stat for Nick Bosa is if he notches 2 more sacks, he'll be at 44 for his career, and he'll have achieved 44 sacks in exactly 50 regular season games, which would match Aldon Smith's total with the 49ers, 44 sacks in exactly 50 games. How cool would that be? I told Bosa about that walking out after the Washington game as he was out on his way to the parking lot, and he thought, oh, wow. Pressure's on, get 2 sacks. Yeah, he didn't look deathly ill today. So he probably just went home a little early, feeling a little bit under the weather. So I would assume that Nick Bosa will be okay to go on Sunday, but we'll never know until the day actually comes or we get an update a little bit later in the week. All right. So anyway, this is something I talked about a little bit earlier. George Odom, I talked to him about this in the locker room today. He now leads the NFL in special teams tackles. And he told him finally, he was gunning for that all season. 18 special teams tackles for Odom, and Demetrius Flanagan-Foles is at 14, not too far behind him. 18 and 14. That is number 1 and number 3 in the NFL. 49ers roaring on all cylinders. Make sure you check out Matt Barrow's article from practice today. I didn't have one at practice today, but Matt Barrows did. This is on The Athletic. I will give you guys a little subscribe button right there. So go ahead and check that out. I could even put the link into the chat right here so you guys can check it out. All right, let's go after some questions here. What do you guys have on your mind? I'm not going to be on for all too long today. Just wanted to do a little bit of a live. I know that this Raiders week, some luster probably taken out of it with the Raiders really struggling now out of the playoffs. No Derek Carr, no Chandler Jones, no Denzel Perryman, but they do still have Max Crosby. And Max is a player. They do still have, who do they still? Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams. So there's some talent on this Raiders team. There's always talent in the NFL. If you're not ready to play, you can't get beat, no matter who you are. But the 49ers have been ready to play for 2 straight months now. It's been over 2 months that they've lost the game. We're sitting here on December 28th, and the 49ers haven't lost since October 23rd. It is. The crowd is expected to be 60% 49er fans. I said that at the start of the show. That's according to Vivid Seats. Jim Everett thinks Niners are going to get beat. Must be a Raiders fan. Or a Rams fan, since he's called Jim Everett. Maybe it's the actual Jim Everett, the guy who sacked himself, right, against the 49ers. Saw some phantom pass rushers. I don't think any of my career success is due to my last name being Lombardi. I haven't gotten hired for any jobs because my last name is Lombardi. It's a nice name to have in football, though. I like that. I'm just answering questions here as they come through. Sean thinks the 49ers are going to win 42-9. It's not out of the question based on how depleted the Raiders are right now. The 49ers can still get the number 1 seed, yes, but it's still a long shot. If Philly would have to lose twice more, they'd have to go 0-3 over their final 3. I think the 49ers winning out is likely, but I don't think that Philly losing out is likely. Will Kalia Davis make his debut before the playoffs? I don't think so. I think that Kalia Davis is probably just going to be a redshirt this year. But if the 49ers need him and he shows enough here over the past 3 weeks, it's possible that they call him up. He wouldn't count against the 8 IR return designations because he was on NFI before the start of the season. So he has that working for him. But I think the timing of when they activated Kalia Davis for practice told the story of their plans. And that was they want to get him some practice time with 3 weeks left to go in the regular season, just in case they get upset early in the playoffs. But I think most of the thinking for Kalia Davis is forward thinking to next year because you haven't really built up a callus yet that you could only build up in games. So if you toss this guy in there, cold turkey in the playoffs, that might be doing Kalia Davis and his potential health a disservice because everybody that he's playing against has built up the callus and he hasn't. He's playing his first NFL snap. He's still coming off that ACL last year in college. To me, he'd have to show a lot over the course of these 3 weeks. And perhaps he's showing something right now, but we're in week 2 of the 3-week window for the 49ers to justify actually activating him to the 53-man roster. Because remember, even though you don't use up one of those 8 return from IR designations, you do use up a 53-man roster spot. He's got to take somebody else's spot. So there is a little bit of a potential downside there that you have to weigh when making that decision. How much of no, this is wait, I clicked on the wrong one. Well, this is a good point. Yeah, the 49ers do have a tiebreaker over the Vikings. Somebody was asking me how much. I just lost the question though. They're moving too fast. Oh, right here. Godzilla. Is Brian Griese a QB guru? Seems like it. I mean, we don't know what the 49ers were going to get from Trey Lance over a longer period of time this year. Maybe we find out more on that next season. But the 49ers hired Griese and this entire cadre of coaches, and they already had most of them on staff, but Bobby Slowick is in the room. They added Anthony Lynn this year. You obviously also have Clay Kubiak in there as Brian Griese's assistant. It was this whole team of coaches built to develop Trey Lance. And then Jimmy Garoppolo, almost by accident, got to use those resources after Trey Lance got hurt. And after Jimmy Garoppolo unexpectedly re-signed, we saw some of Jimmy's best football with the 49ers. And then Brock Purdy is doing crazy things for the number 262 overall pick, who just turned 23 years old yesterday. So you do have to give a lot of credit to Brian Griese based on the results so far. All right, more questions. Let's get some more good questions up there. The Titan of Wall Street. How do you think our defense would adjust to the mobility of Jalen Hurts? Is this question. So it's about the 49ers defense. Well, I mean, mobility from a quarterback always makes things more difficult on a defense. You're always going to be worse if the quarterback has a second threat and he utilizes that threat properly. That's why Steve Young is a Hall of Famer, right? He had 2 ways to beat you. That's why Kyle Shanahan invested so much in Trey Lance, because he's going to have 2 ways to beat you if he can develop that throwing ability. So Jalen Hurts this year has showcased both the arm and the legs. That's been a calling card of his, that dual threat ability. So the 49ers defense would be more strained. Would they be beaten by him? I don't know. I think that at this point, the rate the 49ers are going, they might be favorites if and when they play Philadelphia. Depends on the health situation when that game does potentially arrive. But Jalen Hurts, in all likelihood, is, even if the 49ers do win against the Eagles, would probably get his, right? He'd probably get his on the ground. Now, the health situation of Jalen Hurts is also something to monitor, but they've got some good receivers there. They've got a good O-line there, and they've got a quarterback that can move. So it would strain the 49ers defense for sure. They'd have to be more disciplined, but that's part of the game. There's a reason why the Eagles have only 2 losses so far this season. He did have 3 sacks against the Commanders, except they didn't count one because it was on a 2-point conversion. And don't ask me why they don't count 2-point conversions. I think that's BS. I think they should, if the points count on the 2-point conversion, the sacks should count as well. All right, guys. I only wanted to go about 15 minutes today. I have a lot to do. Yeah, we need Mike back, don't we? Hopefully he's aboard soon. Not sure. Mike's just hanging out in Visalia right now. Good stuff. Fellow Mount Whitney alum, Mike. All right, yeah, Bosa did have 3 sacks. That's the answer to that, but only 2 of them were counted. Everybody, thank you. Make sure you subscribe. And, I could put this banner up. Welcome to our 2022 49ers coverage, even though it's basically 2023. Just a couple more days. Happy New Year, everybody. Enjoy the final days of this year. Everybody take care.